year of the metal rat, there are 12 Chinese animals, you probably know, 5 elements, and therefore 60 different composite animals. So there's a metal rat every 60 years. Now, Chinese masters, if you speak to a Chinese grandmaster, you speak to 2 Chinese grandmasters, you get at least 3 opinions. So what we can start with is what they agree on. So we have 2 things that they agree on. One is that it's the year of the metal rat. One is that the whirling low shoe magic square has a 7 in the middle. So those are 2 different models, if you like, 2 different cycles. So the first thing we can say, because it is a metal rat, is that what's called the Tai Shui, which means great year, is moving from the north. So the energy is coming from the north, so practically that means that facing into the north is very demanding. It's like facing into a very strong wind. And it's important also to get the difference between location and direction. So there's nothing wrong with the north as a place to be, but this energy is coming through the Tai Shui from the north. It's the most powerful energy of the year. Which means, logically enough, of course, that facing south is quite a good idea. But again, being south is not such a great idea. I will elaborate these ideas. So I'm going to talk about the metal rat from 3 different standpoints, if you like. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the way, very, very briefly, the way each of the Zodiac animals will be affected. Secondly, I will talk about how your states will be affected. And then thirdly, I'm going to talk about a much more global thing about the future and so on and so forth. So if we start talking animals, the effect of the metal rat will be different depending on who you are. Now, no astrological analysis can do you justice, because you're far more complex than anything that a simple analysis can highlight. And you always have free will, and nothing that I'm going to say is written in stone. So, I'm going to talk to you about the effect upon each of the animals, and I'm also going to attempt to point out to you the difference between an animal that rules your year, an animal that rules your month, an animal that rules your day, and an animal that rules your hour. To make best use of this information, you would need to know the animal of each of those. If you don't, however, you can make notes, you can email me, and I can elucidate them quickly. So, if you were born in the rat year, this year is the year of the metal rat. The metal rat is about hard, logical truths. The rat is yang water, which means it's about communication. All water is in communication with all other water. If you drop a glass of water at Zeebrugge, it raises the sea level in the Gulf of Mexico. All water is in communication with all other water. We're 80% water, whatever we are. The rat is about yang water. Rats are generally eloquent. They're a very smart rat who've learned not to be eloquent. If you're talking with someone, an older person who lets you make a fool of yourself before they speak, that's probably a rat. So don't be led to believe that they're necessarily using their eloquence in a way you can recognize. The year of the metal rat, this is about hard truths, because the metal brings a certain bitterness. It has a very logical, precise, a kind of a self-righteous thing about it. Yang metal, which is what the metal is with the rat, is scientific, internal, its movement is internal, it is introspective. Yang metal represents the mature man. There aren't very many of those. And so what you have is a year in which it's important to point out the logical truth. Whether we're talking about on the global stage, where it's about time we paid attention to the scientists, or whether it's seen as a balance between woo-woo energy and scientific energy. We live in both worlds, we live in many worlds, of course. It's about respecting logical truth. It's about stopping kidding ourselves. And this will be true at a global level to some extent. It'll be true at a political level to some extent. It'll be true in business. It'll be true in your relationships. But to be born in the rat year, to be born in, say, 1960, 1948, 72, 84, 96, 2008, these are all rat years. This will be particularly focused upon you. So if you're born in the rat year, this will apply to you, but it will also particularly apply to your family patterns. So feeling back one day, it'll apply to your family patterns, to your DNA, to your heritage. So if it's in your year, it is your deep heritage. It will relate to your parents and grandparents, your ancestors also. The next animal is the rat. To the rat is the ox. This is in the conventional sequence, starting with the rat. And the ox is yin earth. And what the ox does is to stick to the point, sometimes past its sell-by date. And the ox is very sensitive, probably the most psychic of the animals. Its hour is between 1 and 3 in the morning, the witching hour. Yeah. And the ox is in charge at the moment. So it's an interesting time for the ox. The ox is not generally reckoned to be the most powerful of the animals. But the ox dictates the agenda in the rat year and the ox year, so the next 2 years. But if you're born in a rat month, I'm trying to illustrate the difference between year, month, day, and hour. If you're born in the ox month, then this will be true of your work situation possibly. Slightly more shallow past, so to do with your siblings, to do with exes, to do with education, to do with class, those kinds of things. And the lesson for the ox this year, if you like, is to realise that they have power that may not come back again for a while. If you want an illustration of this, that Barack Obama, Metal Ox in 1961, you may have noticed that he could do pretty much what he liked in 2008 and 2009, and then couldn't get anything through Congress for the next 6 years. That's the pattern for the ox starting now. And what's worth also pointing out is this term Tai Sui, which the rat represents, means great year. It doesn't mean that is a great year. It doesn't mean the rat is a great year. It means it is a month in a greater year of 12 years. Which is where it keys in, I think, with the Olmec and the Mayan calendars and the things Graham Hancock has been unearthing in Turkey, which is kind of scary. So that brings us up to date with what we have to deal with. And what I'll also say is that these things are forecasts. Now, technically, a forecast only has to be 70% correct. That's why the weather forecast is next to Russell Grant in the mornings. It only has to be 70% correct. This is not a prediction, it's a forecast. And in Chimendanja, which we'll touch on at the end, which is the cutting edge of Chinese divination, it bears the relationship with Chinese horoscopes that chess has the drafts. In Chimendanja, the purpose of doing a forecast is to see what can be changed. So I want you to hear all this in that context. Anyway, the next in the sequence is the tiger. So if you're born in the day of the tiger, if your pillar is the day, the tiger, it's called a pillar because the characters are on top of each other. So metal on top of rat is a pillar. The tiger is very fierce. The tiger can wait forever before it pursues its prey. So tiger has vision. A balanced tiger is someone you die for. An unbalanced tiger is very volatile. And the tiger is at the heart of the energy that we're dealing with. You can tell the nature of an animal sometimes if you just look at the ears represented. So the tiger, possibly the most typical tiger year, is 1914. Interestingly, you're talking about 1917. 1914, the beginning of the First World War, when more young men went to kill more young men than at any other time before or since. Also, 60 years later, because there are 60 animals, 1974, the year when America, under the guise of having finished the Vietnam War, carpet bombing in Southeast Asia, very, very aggressive. Also, if you're paying attention to history lessons at school, 60 years before 1914 was 1854. Does anyone know what happened in 1854? Nobody paying attention to history lessons was in charge of the Light Brigade. And if there is any purpose in knowing this stuff, it's to learn from it. And had we learned in 1854 that sending horses and young men against cannons wasn't a great idea, we might not have done it in 1914. So, next in the sequence is the rabbit. So if you were born in the hour of the rabbit, which is between 5 and 7 in the morning, the nature of the rabbit is to be, it's yin-wood, kind of gentle. The rabbit is the networker. So if you have a rabbit in your Bazi, in your Chinese horoscope, Bazi, 4 pillars, you will have that gentle, accommodating, looking after people kind of energy. Next in sequence, after the rabbit, is the dragon. The dragon occupies April, it's between 7 and 9 in the morning. I didn't tell you about what's going to happen to the rabbit this year, did I? Or even the tiger. I'm going back to the tiger. Tiger will be swamped with opportunities, but the tiger has to be very, very choosy. So if you're born in 1950, 62, 74, 86, and so on, the rabbit also will be swamped with opportunities. And again, it's a different kind of thing, because with the tiger, it's a question of empowering the right things, empowering what makes more people happy as opposed to what gives more illusory power. The rabbit is yin-wood and will be swamped by water, quite possibly. So if you're a rabbit, it's a question of being very selective, getting your priorities right. And technically, the relationship between the rabbit and the rat is what's called an ingratitude clash, which is a questioning of your upbringing. Questioning of your upbringing. Rabbits liable to be doing that this year. Rabbit anywhere in your Bazi. So moving on to the dragon. The dragon is empowered by the rat. The dragon is the one who can wiggle their nose and do magic. If you have a dragon in your year, it is probable that your opposite gender parent had a kind of magical ability. And for better or for worse, a woman's power comes from her father, and vice versa for men, but it's more graphic with women. It doesn't matter what kind of a turkey you was. I speak as the father of daughters. Or whether he was absent. That remains the case. Next is the snake. If you're born in the month of the snake, which is broadly May, but Chinese months begin a little bit later than ours, the snake's issue is truth. So people like Xi Jinping and Bashar Assad, who are snakes, the water of the rat means that, again, their brightness may start to fade. Those people possibly don't have a great future. There are old souls and young souls, if you like. There are balanced animals and there are unbalanced animals. An unbalanced snake does not respect the truth. So Tony Blair, for instance, snake in 3 pillars. No awareness of the importance of truth. A balanced snake, like Bernie Sanders, for instance, will tell the hard truth. And this year is demanding the hard truth, and the snake is very much on the spot for that. If you were born on the day of the horse, I've lost track of which was which here, it doesn't matter very much. The day of the horse, it will be very personal to you. Your day pillar, the precise day on which you were born, for which you need a Chinese calendar, will be very personal to you and also personal to your partner. So if you're born on a horse day, you'll tend to be spontaneous You'll be someone who improvises. It's passionate, it's quick, not a great planner as a rule, and that may apply to you or to your partner because the day is what describes your true partner. And this year, the horse's ideas may be swamped by the water of the rat. So the relationship between the horse and the rat is that bright ideas can be kind of drenched, which means you have to stick with the good ones. And it's a question of proportion. More energy needs to be put behind new ideas that are valid, because the rat energy will tend to wash the not so valid ones away. If you were born in the hour of the sheep or the goat, you're likely to be have a spiritual agenda, but your being here probably indicates that. And the sheep wants to join. Sheep, not goat, because in this side of the world, the goat has a very yang implication, and the sheep is, of course, yin. The sheep is a joiner. The sheep wants to belong to things. The sheep wants to be in clubs. And in a rat year, that may be difficult. So if it matters to you to be in particular organizations, to belong to things, particularly to be involved in family, that may be hard for a sheep this year. Sheep are very interesting because they have this kind of meekness about them. But they also have this need to be in tune with what's happening popularly. So you get certain people like the populists, like Jair Bolsonaro, who is a sheep, who needs so badly to belong that he reflects a low level wish. Rupert Murdoch is a sheep as well, interesting. And Michael Gove. It's interesting, just say Michael Gove and people laugh. Michael Gove. If you're born in the year of the monkey, you'll have a sense of humour. The rat likes the monkey. Good, healthful year for the monkey. The monkey's weakness is their humour because it tends to be at someone else's expense. What the monkey needs to do is to be aware of the benefits of buttless humour. It doesn't mean people not falling over on their asses. It means no butt to the humour. Then the rooster this year, the rooster is yin metal, and the rooster will tend to drain the rat. Roosters are tempted by the superficial. They're yin metal. They like things that shine. They're kind of magpie-like. So the rooster needs to make sure that they're aware of what matters and what doesn't, because it will be easy to cruise this year. If you're born in the year of the dog is yang earth, which means immovable, both stubborn and still. And the relationship between the dog and the rat is money. So the dog will have lots of opportunities, probably, but we'll have to move. We'll have to be much more mobile, much more flexible than they normally are. Finally, the pig is yin water. The pig is the counterpoint to the rat, if you like. So where the rat is naturally eloquent, but he's not to be, the pig is naturally reticent. The pig is multi-talented and not good at running groups, if you like, not good at managing lots of different people. It drives them potty. And they look so competent, people don't notice when they need help. If you know any pigs, don't believe them when they tell you they've got everything handled, because it suddenly happens that they don't. If you know the poem by Stevie Smith, Not Waving But Drowning, does anyone know that one? Not waving but drowning. Not waving but drowning. That's about the pig. So those are the 12 animals. That's a very, very brief rundown of what to expect in the metal rat for each of those animals. Let's now move on to your space. These numbers, referred to generally as stars, have thousands and thousands of implications. They're kind of like algebra, if you like. They're colour-coded, and they all have They all have positions, they relate to members of the family, parts of the house, parts of the world. Every single enclosed space anywhere is affected by that this year. So I say they're colour-coded. Green means usable, red means friendly, and black means take care. We have the south here, we have the north here. So in the middle we have the 7, and the 7 is both fire and metal, which means it can be very aggressive. It often means literally fires and burglaries. In my own house, where we have a 7 and a 9 together, we were burgled. The door was those two numbers. The 7 can be kind of treacherous. It means that this year, on the level of the world, it means that headquarters, governments, appointed leaders, capitals cannot be trusted. Not that you needed me to tell you that. In your own space, avoid being in the middle too much. If you must, a little bit of water will tend to reduce it. There's a certain violence that is reduced by water, and the metaphor, of course, is that self-righteousness is reduced by self-disclosure. So the 7's in the middle, that's what you do. The 8 here, which is generally reckoned to be a good number, I expect everybody knew that. If you were walking past it, did you see there's a casino that's 888? Did you see that? It's traditionally, the Chinese would say, the most fortunate number. And it's moved to the northwest. Now the northwest is the place of authority, the place of the Father. So what this means is that authority has moved away from appointed authority, if you like. The blessing has gone to genuine authority. As Bob Dylan said, don't follow leaders and watch your parking meters. Well, D.H. Lawrence, a slightly more intellectual reference here. D.H. Lawrence said, trust the tale, not the teller. So the 8 is in place of authority. It wants to be stimulated. So in your own space, you want to make use of this. And the best way to stimulate these stars, which are occupying these locations in your space, is to be there. So better than any wind chime, water feature, or whatever, is to actually be there where these good stars are. So in the northwest, bright light if you can't be there, you if you can be. And what I also want to say is, of course, this is very generic advice, and your particular space, there may be good reasons for not doing some of these things. So, by way of the health warning, stocks can go up as well as down.
So don't sit in the fireplace, for example?
Not such a great idea. Yeah, quite right. Very wise advice, thank you. And here in the West, we have 9, which is also a good number, as you can see. This is joyful events, it kind of multiplies. So again, you activate that by fire, ideally. And the way that I'm counting these is actually the movement of the 7 visible and 2 invisible stars of the Big Dipper as they go around the pole star, which is due north of midnight. So that's why this strange pattern. If you do Tai Chi, you may be familiar with this pattern. This is a classic Tai Chi pattern. The 1 here is in the northeast. The northeast is traditionally called the ghost gate. It's the spooky bit, most likely in your house. If there was a woo-woo bit, it's lovely here. This is a place of meditation. Because the 1 is there, which is about communication, again about water. This is a good place for prayer, for contacting God, Spirit, higher mind, Tao, rather God me you pursue. Good place for an office too, actually. Good place for communication, good place for locating. 7891. Up here we have the 2. The 2 represents woman. It also represents doubling up. And it's a very important number, particularly for this evening in this context. For 100 years or so, the 2, which as I say means doubling up, increase, accruing, has been interpreted as meaning growths, cancers, edema, swelling, and overweight. That has been dismissing the quality of relationship, gentleness, the literally mother. And for thousands of years, something like that has been true, in that historically, a woman who was sexually active was pregnant for 30 years if she didn't die meanwhile. And a woman had a choice between being sexy and dead. And, well, there was you could be a crone if you like, but that was about it. And these things are changing. And some Feng Shui masters have, for the last few years, quite subtly been saying the two which they've been describing as a plague of boils for 100 years, as being worth risking because there would be gain. And I have kind of a political view on this, which is we empower the two. Interestingly, it's earth, so it would be made stronger with fire. So you would put light there. And the two is in the south, so naturally there is fire there. And the two is the south this year suffers from what's called Sanshao, or three difficulties, because of the position of the rat, because the Tai Sui is coming from the north to the south, rather from north to south. So there is visibility, prominence. This is a kind of, it's a kind of a knife-edge thing, because there is risk here. This is where the need to call out abuses and choose gentleness rather than force, which we'll come on to in a little while, because that's possibly the single most pernicious force in the world today. So I'm suggesting you put fire there in your own space. I'm suggesting you respect this rather than disdain it, which Feng Shui masters have been doing for 100 years, which men have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. Here we have the three, which is a subtly different green. Here it's more of a blokey kind of a green here. The three is in the north, which is to do with yang wood. It's a kind of adolescent, kind of aspirational sort of energy. Hard to control. You would normally either give it water and keep a sharp eye on it, or you give it fire, that is light, and have it be expressed. But it's a helpful energy if you can make use of it. It's a growing energy. The wood is about constant expansion, constant growth. The 4 is here in the southwest, and the 4 is the number of the eldest daughter, but it's in the place of the mother. So this is, in point of fact, I prescribe journeys between these places, a daily journey each morning to connect them up. And the journey I prescribe that involves that is all the numbers that mean the women, all the daughters and the mother. Not because I have created that artificially, but because the positions of them actually dictate it, which is a bit too complicated to go into here, I think. Anyway, the 4 probably wants water or plants, and it's probably got the best light in your house, probably up here in the southwest. This is where the good light is, isn't it? And you might be wondering, why is the south at the top? Has anybody wondered that? The answer to that is because obviously the world is not a particular way up. As far as I can tell, there aren't koala bears falling off the earth in the south. They don't wear, the Australians don't wear those funny hats because they're worried about hitting their heads. There is no up or down to the earth. But the south is where the fire is, 93 million miles in that direction. So it's a much more logical way to draw a map, even though it's perhaps counterintuitive for us. So we now come to the 5. This is the most difficult number, and it's in the east. The east is the place of the young man, it's the place of thrusting, aspiration, ambition, all that kind of stuff. And this suggests that is not well supported this year. The 5 is a frustrating kind of energy very often, but the 5 is the power. The 90-year-old Chinese Grand Masters in Southeast Asia who are doing extraordinary things with water features, what they're doing is working with the 5. The 5 is like a nuclear reactor. That is to say, you want nice cheap hot water, but you don't want to sit in the reactor. So, locating east, not such a great idea this year, and you can extend that politically as well. But facing east, potentially very powerful, particularly later in the year. Finally, this here is in the southeast, the 6, which is the father. So what we have here is yang metal energy, which is about the father visiting the daughter, which has an implication of both profit and also the abuse of women. But in balance, it's about sharing mutually the power of men and women. So those are the very rapid whiz through the energies in your space this year. And as I said earlier, the Tai Sui, the most powerful energy, is coming through here. And the Tai Sui, go here, yes. Leave that for now. The Tai Sui is recognized a month in a great year. So what we are is in the depths of a winter that is perhaps 3 years long. And what we have is a limited time to change what's happening. And I'm going to go on to one of those complicated ones for a second. I'll try and keep it as simple as I can to explain this. That'll be. This is Qimendanja. Does anyone have any idea what Qimendanja is? Anyone study anything weird in Chinese? Oh, okay. Very, very quickly. What Qimendanja is for forecast. No prediction, forecast. And what we have here is the moment of the winter solstice. That's when, for certain types of calculation, the energy changed. 1304 on the 22nd December. And technically, this character here, which is Koi, yin water, is us, and it's reappeared here because of the calculations. Technically, this here, which is Ji, which is yin earth, is the situation, and that's turned up here. And technically, this here, which is yang metal, is the problem. This character technically hides the wood tiger. And what we've got is this describing the jam that we're in. Now, you see these words. You don't need to know any weird stuff to get a feeling of commander, hero. These are very clear ideas. What we have is the source of the problem is the wood tiger. So not individual wood tigers. If you're born in 1974, this doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. But the wood tiger is this particular kind of competitive shortage kind of energy. And what it's been doing, if you look at it in this particular way, it has been empowering the post-war era. And the post-war era starts, if you like, in 1946. 1946 is a fire dog. Technically, a wood tiger supports a fire dog. That's elemental relationship. 3 of the last 4 American presidents have been fire dogs. Born in 1946. You know which was the one who wasn't. You don't need me to tell you which one wasn't born in 1946. The safety one, yeah? The one everybody likes, yeah? But what you get, these last three American presidents is the personification of a certain kind of entitlement. Donald Trump, who is a talent vacuum and extraordinarily privileged, clearly thinks the world has been unfair to him. Clearly thinks, despite the billions that he didn't earn and the power that he abuses, that he's entitled to more. This is the fire dog. And by the way, there are good fire dogs. This is a question of imbalance. I know some wonderful fire dogs, so please don't think I'm condemning fire dogs, but I am talking about this era. All three of these presidents are draft dodgers and entitled, and with, again, this strange feeling of unfairness. You have Bill Clinton, who reckoned that, all he did with his trousers was his own business. Clearly it was not. Similarly with George W. Bush, the Americans have managed to elect two morons this century. George W. Bush, clearly, you've got more, three? Three, I think, shaking your head.
No.
And maybe you think more.
Yeah.
George W. Bush clearly thought that his entitlement as president was to enrich good old boys. He thought, why would you do it some other way? This kind of energy is coming to an end. And what I'm saying about the wood tiger is that it comes out of a belief in shortage. It comes out of a belief in aggression. It comes out of a belief that might is right. And the tiger is that way of approaching things. We need to get beyond it. We need to get beyond it quickly. And if we look at the possible futures, the metal rats, I'll give you two examples of metal rats to give you an idea of two possible futures. One is Prince Andrew, who may or may not be guilty of all sorts of things, but being guilty of privilege he certainly is, no question. And the TV interview where he couldn't understand the difference between a birthday party and a normal shooting party, that look on his face is just extraordinary. That is the hugely unbalanced metal rat. The other problem at the moment is Emily Thornberry, also a metal rat. And those are two alternate futures, if you like. Now, what can we do about this? Well, the answer is we have to rethink. Because the way that these energies are feeding each other, it comes from us. This is us here. And what we need to be doing is rewarding different things. Now, research has shown that there is very little difference in the psychological profiles of psychopaths and Fortune 100 CEOs. Almost no difference. The same attitudes, the same carelessness, the same depredation of the earth. The quality of the wood tiger, this 1914 thing, is about needing space, needing more room. There is no more room. The earth is of a finite size. Cheap labour has moved as far east as it's going to go. The next stop is Seattle. We cannot continue to look for growth, and we cannot continue to empower these sorts of human beings. And what I'm suggesting to you, ladies, is that you look very closely at the qualities in men that you empower. Because while we are between us empowering these kinds of things, the more success appears to relate to these qualities, the worse it gets. And to you, men, what we need to do is to see that those competitive, I am the cleverest, I am the fastest, I am the sexiest, I am the strongest. We have to move on from that. And I'm not claiming to be exempt from that. We have to move on from that. And what I hope that I can leave you with is the idea that this is my world. On one level, I am God. I mean, I don't mean up on, because you're God too. But insofar as you exist, of course. This reality is my reality. I can have it any way I want it. I can change it. But I have to choose to change it. It's not going to be easy. We probably won't manage it in our generation. But we can see things differently. We can see that there is plenty of evidence of that. And we can stick with that belief. Now, as I said, and this is a forecast, not a prediction, has to be 70% true. My earliest influence, I was kind of neglected as a child, in a kind of annoying kind of a way, but I was reading anything I could lay my hands on when I was very, very young, and I came across a guy called Edgar Cayce when I was about 8 or 9, and he was a light worker, working in the 20s and 30s and 40s in the US. And what he'd do was to go into a trance, and people would bring obscure illnesses to him. And he'd go into a trance, and he'd say, he would diagnose and he'd prescribe, and he'd be extraordinary, he would be right an extraordinary proportion of the times. The person, he would say, you stepped on a water spider, and what you did is to eat, dates. And he would be right. But he would be in a trance, he didn't know what he said. He'd come to it and go, what did I say? So what he did from quite early on was to have someone transcribe what he said. And he went into all sorts of, he clearly went into a lot of other topics beyond healing. So he identified prehistoric civilizations. There was a place called Lemuria, which was one of his particular obsessions, which is probably a greater Indonesia and possibly same as Atlantis, but I mean, those ideas are exhausting. But what he would also do is look to the future. According to Edgar Cayce, New York should be underwater now. Fact is, he may be 2 to 3 generations out. But what he would say when people confronted him and said, you predicted this, Edgar, what happened? He'd say, prayer works. Prayer works. And my teacher, Dr. Chuck Stefano, those principles embody everything that I do, would say much the same thing. Chuck would make outrageous forecasts. And people would challenge him, he'd say, prayer worked. Now, the way that I read this, and you can see it's complicated, you need to study for a while to understand what's written here. That suggests that the potential rise in sea level, you forget about 4 or 5 meters. It is much, much more than that. And the power to change that is in our hands. It is down to that constant expansion, that aggression, that competitive thing that would tiger our bodies. We can still prevent it. As I said, we are in the middle of winter. There is a bigger cycle again, about 144 years. That is the time scale we're talking about. But as I say, this is a forecast, not a prediction. It is in our hands. So, I think I've said a lot to say tonight. Thank you very much.